Welcome to our Hive studios. According to Morgan Stanley, global e-commerce rose from 15% of total retail sales in 2019 to 21% in 2021. As consumers began shopping in person, it now sits at estimated 22% of sales. Morgan Stanley believes that over the long term, the e-commerce market has plenty of room to grow. But the biggest retail sales are still happening inside physical stores. How do you make your store stand out and drive footfall? I'm Lina Vaz, content editor at Hive, and to help us understand how to maximize your retail space, I have with me in the studio David Roberts, Managing Director of Formroom, a globally recognized design studio specializing in interiors for retail and hospitality. Good afternoon, David, and thank you so much for being with us at our Hive studios. Formroom has an incredible body of work from Hyundai to Charlotte Tilbury. And I wonder, what do you have in mind when you have a new project? What is your design process?
Thank you for that introduction, very kind. Naturally, it's very different according to who we're working with, whereabouts in the world it is. But I suppose in general, it always starts with an insight phase. So that's us figuring out who the target demographic is, what do they think and care about, how can we appeal to them. Then it's about the market. So who are the competitors for our client, what are they doing, and how can we outperform them? Then it's really about what the experience is. So we call that experience mapping. These days, particularly retail, can be anything. It can be more traditional retail, so something that looks and feels like it sells product and functions in a way that a lot of people are familiar with. It can be more kind of a brand hangout spot, so that could be more like a hospitality type space. More or less nowadays, a lot of the brands are doing something a bit in between. So they might have some traditional retail, maybe with a cafe space or a place that you can hold events and things like that. So it's kind of drawing across those disciplines. Technology is really important. So it's figuring out what technology we can put into the space to enhance convenience or more brand impact. And then from a design perspective, I think for us, we think about original, memorable, shareable, and we try to instill that thought process into the client. If they're not creating designs that are memorable, that differentiate themselves, that provide real impact to that target consumer, they probably shouldn't bother doing a bricks and mortar store at all. They should probably just do a nice website and a big stockroom and leave it there.
And in terms of sustainability, because it's such a buzzword right now for everyone, and obviously retailers, some of them might be accused of greenwashing due to very strategic marketing campaigns. When you do design a retail space, do you actually have to take into account sustainability? And is that a demand from the client, or is that your own proposal?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's such a hot button issue across the world, isn't it? Not just retail. But for us, it's always been something that we've tried to promote. And generally, we've come up against concerns around budget because, it might have been too expensive, or the actual viability of some of the more sustainable materials. They're not fire rated, they're not durable enough, etc. Luckily, we've now got to a point where a lot of those materials, they've been around long enough, big enough companies want to be using them, that it's a lot more easy to use and a lot more easy to sell into the client. And so, yeah, it starts with materials. So we work with lots of different material suppliers. We're kind of researching that all the time, stuff made out of recycled yogurt pots and old coconut husks and things like that. So it's got a great story to it. But also now they look really beautiful and they can actually function as, build materials or decorative materials. I think beyond the materiality, it's also about kind of functionality. So when we're designing really any space, but again, particularly a retail space, we're thinking about giving the client a space that can be very multifunctional. So rather than having to tear it all down and then rebuild something new in 6 months' time or a year or whatever, we're giving them the ability to adapt things, move things around, maybe just recover certain things. And so they can have what looks like a brand new store every 6 months without having to build it every 6 months.
And do you have that kind of work right now where you don't start from scratch, but you just continue working with the same client and just do a refurbishment like from time to time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's particularly great for brands that are more seasonal. So they might have a spring, summer, Christmas campaign, etc. So we'll start building in functionality so that not only you can move things around and it still looks cohesive, but you can also add in different campaign graphics or different digital media on the screen so that it has a different look and feel, but we haven't had to build new things and construct in that way each time.
And in terms of, you already mentioned technology earlier, but in terms of the metaverse, do you think that will be a big influence? Do you think that will merge into the retail design space, or that's not happening just yet?
We talk about it all the time. I think because of the kind of designs that we do as well, it's almost verging on that more kind of digital aesthetic anyway. So we talk about it a lot and how prevalent and important it's going to be. I think a lot of brands got very used to being very creative during lockdown when they weren't opening stores or window campaigns, etc. So they put more energy into developing more digitally led strategies. We see lots of animations on websites and on their socials, and now NFTs and all of that kind of stuff. They're very kind of digitally focused. So that aesthetic, now that we can build again and that we can do real life stuff, I think it's bled back into real life design. So, super squishy stuff, furry pink walls and zero gravity environments, things like that. That's becoming a reality that is literally lifted from places like the metaverse and social media and things like that. It's also about the Gen Z consumer. So Gen Z is familiar with that online aesthetic. They feel comfortable with it, and they're fast becoming the most valuable consumer for a lot of brands. And so they want to appeal to those consumers. So it starts to, again, mirror online, offline worlds collide.
That's really interesting. And thank you so much, David, for being with us at Hive Studios today. And thank you for joining us.